So our first real trailer for Game of Thrones Season 8 has dropped, and it gives a lot of huge hints on what we can expect in the upcoming season. First of all, what's so interesting about this trailer is that it really focuses in on the first 3 episodes, with the climactic end really focusing on episode 3, at the battle for Winterfell. So I'm going to go through this trailer and piece it together in chronological order, and kind of see what I can take from all of these scenes and what that means for the story. So I believe first we're going to see the arrival. We see a boy watching as he climbed a tree and watches Daenerys, Jon, and their army walk through the village to Winterfell. And this is a big callback to Season 1, and I think we're going to see many callbacks to Season 1, as this is the final season. And they want to show that, some characters have come full circle. Much like how this boy is watching King Jon and Queen Daenerys walk through their village. It's like Bran waiting at the top of Winterfell, watching King Robert and Queen Cersei coming to Winterfell. We see Jon and Daenerys on horseback with their Unsullied. And first thing I want to draw attention to is that Daenerys is of course on a horse. She is the mother of dragons, but at the end of the day, she needs to be non-threatening. And I think there's going to be a political undertone in how Daenerys handles her relationship with Jon and the Northerners. And I think that political game will also feed into how she deals with Cersei and the civilians in King's Landing. But then we see the dragons flying through the north. And obviously we see a big reaction. The Northerners do not like it, except for Arya. Which makes sense because she's had her fair share of experience. She's been hardened into an assassin, so there's not many things that can shake her. But there is something that can, which we find out later in the trailer. And then we see Sansa react quite differently to Rhaegal and Drogon. And I think this also teases a potential political storyline in the trailer. It's no question that Sansa won't like Jon supporting Daenerys. She voiced her concerns before. She feels like Daenerys' involvement is bad for the North. And there's a lot of pieces on the table to help out Sansa. Bran now knows that Jon is actually a Targaryen. That information could be used to compromise Daenerys' position. And there's also other players on the field, like Varys. Last season, they laid down the groundwork that Varys sometimes doesn't agree with Daenerys. He thinks that sometimes she can be a bit irrational and impulsive, but Daenerys is the best that he's got. What's going to happen to Varys when he finds out that there's another Targaryen, who is the son of the beloved Rhaegar Targaryen and was raised by the honorable Ned Stark? And I think this scene perfectly illustrates how Varys can look at Jon and almost prefer him to a king, if he had the right name.
She gave Tarly a choice. A man who had taken up arms against her. What else could she do?
Not burn him alive alongside his son?
I am her hand, not her head. I can't make her decisions for her.
That's what I used to tell myself about her father. I found the traitors, but I wasn't the one burning them alive.
I have 3 large dragons. I'm going to fly them to the Red Keep.
We've discussed this.
My enemies are in the Red Keep.
You need to find a way to make her listen.
Daenerys is not her father.
And she never will be. With the right counsel.
The people who follow you know that you made something impossible happen. Maybe that helps them believe that you can make other impossible things happen. Build a world that's different from the shit one they've always known. But if you use them to melt castles and burn cities, you're not different. You're just more of the same.
That's why really what I would like to happen is for Varys to talk to Illyrio, who has a lot of money in Essos. And maybe he could fund the Golden Company, give them a brand new contract. So once you destroy the foundation of their current contract, then maybe they'll be able to join King Jon Targaryen, and maybe finally return back home to Westeros. But after Jon and Daenerys arrive in Winterfell, obviously there's going to be a giant reunion. We're going to see a lot of characters come together that we haven't seen together in a while. A really important one is Arya and Jon. And these two have such a close connection together, and I think we'll see Arya kind of come back to herself when she starts to interact with Jon again. But then once everyone arrives at Winterfell, I think in the second episode and ongoing, they're going to really go through the politics. But I think once Jon and Daenerys finally settle into Winterfell, I think there's going to be a conflicting plot between the two. Because the two characters love each other, but there's a couple things that get in the way. First of all is politics, and secondly it's the truth that Jon's actually a Targaryen. We see Bran in a room talking to Sam, but then Sam turns his head and looks at someone else. I have no doubt this is Jon Snow. And then we hear Bran say, "Everything you did brought you to where you are now, where you belong, home."
Kill the boy, Jon Snow.
For the Watch.
Winter is almost upon us. Kill the boy.
For the Watch.
And let the man be born.
For the Watch. For the Watch. For the Watch.
You will find little joy in your command. But with luck, you will find the strength to do what needs to be done.
And I think this quote will come probably after he tells Jon that he's a Targaryen. We saw Jon give Theon the advice that he's both a Stark and a Greyjoy, but I think in this season we're going to see Jon have a personal struggle on who he is. To Jon, Ned is his father. He was raised in Winterfell. As far as he's concerned, he's a bastard of the North. But the fact that he's a Targaryen means that he has to live up to that name. So I think Bran is just reiterating here that everything Jon has done in his journey has led him to where he is now, and that Winterfell is still and always will be his home. But then we see Jon go to multiple places of his childhood, and I think that's just him self-reflecting on his life and what it means for him to be a Targaryen. We see him in the crypts of Winterfell, and I have no doubt he's looking at Ned Stark's tomb. And here we have Daenerys join him, and I think we'll have the two struggle with this new information, but also fall more in love because Daenerys is learning more about Jon. We then see Jon at the Godswood, where his dad always used to go to on occasions. And then after that, we see Jon and Daenerys approach Rhaegal and Drogon. And we see that they're out of Winterfell and they made their own kind of nest. And I think this scene could be very significant because last time Jon came face to face with Drogon, he ended up petting it. And I think we could guess here that Daenerys learns about Jon's heritage. So maybe she's taking him up here for a bigger reason than just petting her dragon. And this is the first time we see Jon come face to face with Rhaegal. And I don't want to read too much into it, but just look at Rhaegal and how submissive he looks as an animal. It's like him and Jon share that special bond that Daenerys has with Drogon. And then we go to Daenerys, and then we also see Tyrion, and I think this feeds into, like I said, the politics and Tyrion really counseling Daenerys. Because I think at the end of the day, Daenerys has gotten herself into trouble from being in love. And now she's falling in love with somebody who's a Targaryen who has a better claim to the throne than she does. So she'll have to handle this situation carefully because the people may follow Jon, and that's totally out of her control. Jon ended up going to the Night's Watch, becoming Lord Commander. He ended up going over the wall and getting the wildlings to follow him. He ended up coming back to the North and becoming King of the North. People follow Jon, and Jon is the person who brings people together. And that's what you need when you're fighting the White Walkers. It's the living against the dead. And Jon, I believe, is the only one who can get all the living together to fight a common enemy. So that's why I think Daenerys is going to have a hard time. Because Jon has a better claim to the throne. He's a Targaryen. And right now he's the best king for the situation that they are in. But then we start seeing the Battle of Winterfell. And we see a lot of preparation and build-up to what the big climax is going to be. We see Dolorous, Ed, Beric Dondarrion, and Tormund. And it's been confirmed that they've escaped Eastwatch. And it seems like they're entering Winterfell. And maybe it's so empty because people are in hiding from the White Walkers' arrival. And then we see Jaime arrive at Winterfell. And we see him convincing everyone that he means no harm. And I think Jaime's going to arrive after Daenerys and Jon have. For a couple reasons. Jaime's going to make his case and he'll be seen as a traitor. But he will have a couple people in his corner. First of all, Brienne will have something to say. She will tell Sansa and she will tell Jon that Jaime is a good person and that he means no harm. Maybe she'll even tell the story how Jaime told her to go rescue the Stark sisters. And then we have Tyrion. And Tyrion will counsel Daenerys on how he believes that Jaime is telling the truth. And for that reason, I think they will keep Jaime around. We also see Gendry at Winterfell. They're doing some blacksmithing, which makes sense. They got to build all of that armor for all the new bodies who are going to be fighting against the White Walkers. And it's a brand new breastplate that includes a Targaryen and Stark sigil. And what I find funny about this sigil that's Targaryen and Stark is that it represents a couple things. First of all, at face value, it represents Daenerys and Jon, and their armies fighting together. But at the end of the series, it could represent just Jon, as he's both Targaryen and Stark, and that feeds into the Golden Company, where they could turn, either break their contract or have their contract shifted and support Daenerys and Jon, but they could also change allegiances to just Jon, and then it creates that power struggle that we may see in the season. But then we go to the Battle of Winterfell, and we see it build and escalate a lot like Battle of the Bastards, and it makes sense because it's the same director. First of all, we see the emotions before the fight. We see Davos standing on the battlements of Winterfell. We see Grey Worm and Missandei kiss. We see a hand closing up on a bow. And these are those character moments. We see their nerves, their anxieties, much like at the start of Battle of the Bastards. And then we see the reactions to the threat. We see Jorah rushing to get into position, with Unsullied and Dothraki riding behind him. We see Grey Worm staring at the threat, almost preparing himself for battle. And then we see Podrick, Brienne, and Jorah waiting for the White Walkers, and a dead horsefoot comes into the shot, which means that they are most definitely going to be fighting off the White Walkers. But how the fight's going to go is very interesting to me. I'm sure we'll lose a lot of favorite characters in episode 3, but based on how they set it up, I'm not sure how everyone's going to get out of it. Jon and Daenerys have a dragon, but Bran doesn't have anyone, Sansa doesn't have anyone. It's going to be very impressive how these characters manage to escape, because we know it's going to get bad. We see Jon running to the doors. We see a lot of fire behind him. And I think Grey Worm, Jon, all of them, they started the fight outside of Winterfell, and it's getting so bad that now they're rushing back to the gates. And I think we may be seeing Jon running back for more than just his safety. I think Winterfell is caught on fire, and he's probably running back to Winterfell to try and save his people. And there's a lot of fire imagery that we can see throughout the rest of these shots. We see someone fighting on the walls of Winterfell. It's just engulfed in fire. This isn't Jaime because this person is right-handed. If I were to place a guess, it seems like it could be Brienne. And I think that makes sense because in another shot we see Jaime with similar lighting on top of the castles shouting out orders. So I think in this battle we're going to be seeing Brienne and Jaime together a lot, kind of rekindling their past. And then we see the Hound with flames in the background, and I think that shot is so great because it plays into his biggest fear. I think at the battle for Winterfell the Hound is going to have a very hard time. And I think he would be one of the characters who may die at the Battle of Winterfell, maybe protecting somebody that he cares about. Maybe Arya. And we see Arya fighting a lot. And it seemed like the trailer was trying to put forth that like this is her last stand. I feel like at the Battle for Winterfell, if they wanted a big character to die, I think Arya would be top billing. The reason is because I feel like she's come full circle with her story, and I think she has nothing else to offer. She's one of my favorite characters, but I don't think the showrunners are going to use Arya as an assassin. So I think she's going to come full circle, she's going to meet Jon, and then she may hold off the White Walkers at Winterfell while everyone escapes. And we know there's a lot of people to escape. We see a lot of women and children in the crypts of Winterfell, including Gilly and the baby, and we see Varys. And I think as the fight goes on, these people will be threatened, and these people will have to be evacuated. And I think that feeds into why Arya is so panicked in this shot. And I think this shot just shows how Arya's come full circle. She went to Essos and learned how to be a trained assassin. She's learned to master her emotions. And she almost puts it up as a defense mechanism to not show people how vulnerable she is. And she even says in the trailer, "I know death. I look forward to seeing this one," as she holds the dragon glass. But the truth is that she doesn't know death. Only her brother Jon does. And I think this is really meant to show us the gravity of the threat of the White Walkers. Arya is standing here feeling like she can take them, but even she is overwhelmed with emotion. Even Arya, as the Master of Death, can't face off against the White Walkers without fear. And then it flashes to her choosing to run, almost like she had to make a decision, whether to save someone she loves or to run. And I think that decision kind of feeds into why I think Arya's come full circle. Because Arya's coming from the Faceless Men saying that she can fight them. She's not afraid of the dead. But she learned something in season 1 that I think is going to come back in the final season. You cannot fight death. You can only say, "Not today."
What do we say to the god of death?
Not today.
Go.
And right here, we see her decide to tell death, "Not today." We then see Drogon breathing fire. And I think the shot could be multiple things. Either it's the dragon breathing fire at the Battle of Winterfell, that's why it's so dark in the background, Or I believe they could have removed the background just to give us a shot of the dragon. Because Drogon could either be doing two things. One, just fighting a bunch of White Walkers, or two, he could be executing someone. And if I were to guess if he was executing somebody, I would say Varys. Melisandre said that Varys isn't going to make it. And I think he's going to spin his final webs, and I think that'll bite him in the butt, and I think Daenerys is going to order an execution. But then let's move on to Cersei. And really this is just Cersei preparing and kind of falling apart while everyone is trying to fight and prepare for the White Walkers in Winterfell. We see the Golden Company finally arrive on Euron Greyjoy's ships, and I guarantee you that they're in Blackwater Bay. And then we see Harry Strickland on the front of the ship as a commander. And I think his blonde hair tells signs of the past of the Golden Company. They were founded by bastard Targaryens, and I think that gives him a good enough reason to support the two Targaryens to the north, Daenerys and Jon. But there may be more to it because the Golden Company is known for never breaking a contract. But then we see a shot of King's Landing in the Red Keep. One thing I want to draw attention to is we see the Golden Company patrolling. And I guarantee you that they've made all of those Scorpion ballistas that are used to shoot down dragons. They've probably put those on every area of King's Landing so they could fight Daenerys. We also get a shot of Cersei looking very smug with Qyburn and the mountain behind her. And based on this, she's either very satisfied that Euron has arrived on his ships, or she has done something or has someone which can help her fight against Daenerys and Jon. But the final shot we see of Cersei I think is the most telling. We see her inside crammed in with their few supporters, and as you can see outside they're probably going through a snowstorm. And we see Cersei seem very emotional, because at the end of the day she's alone and she has no one. And I want to draw attention that she's drinking wine, and she is pregnant. And Cersei has a lot of issues, but I don't think she would drink during pregnancy, because her character is defined as a mother first. I think this almost speaks to her losing her baby, and all she has left now is her wine. And it feeds into the battle for Blackwater, when you just sit inside and wait. So I think after Cersei loses everything, it makes her dangerous, and it makes her prone to using wildfire to really put a stop to everything. But that's it, everybody. That's how I feel about the trailer. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Do you agree with what I'm saying? Do you have any predictions of your own? Let me know. But anyways, hopefully I'll see you guys soon. Take care.